Thanks for checking out this episode of the Growl podcast. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning in. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you can, share it with all your like-minded metalhead friends. I did also get the merch store connected to our YouTube channel, so there's all the Grindcore coffee products are on there, as well as the new Growl podcast apparel, shirts, hats, all sorts of good stuff on there. So be sure to check that out. All that money does help support what I'm trying to get accomplished here. So I appreciate everybody supporting the channel. Once again, I am joined by a guest that I'm really looking forward to speaking with, Dave Gregor, from a band that's been around for a long time, and very much looking forward to kind of digging into his history and his experiences through kind of the hills and valleys of what death metal has been for the last few decades. Dave from Morta Skuld, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Day after, or long day of work, and it's snowing like I'm sure it is by you. So just trying to wind down, and then of course do it all over again tomorrow.
Yeah, I know this. And I know we briefly touched on me bitching about winter, but it's like the older I get, the less tolerant I am. I'm born and raised in South Dakota, and South Dakota is a tundra in the winter. I mean, without a doubt. And I'm assuming it's very much the same where you're at. But it's like, you'd think it raises you hardy being in the cold every year, but it's like I just have a harder time. I still feel cold from 3 days ago, like I haven't warmed up since the temperature really dropped.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I turned 59 a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know. I just always feel like if I don't have a hat on, I'm going to get sick or,
right.
Just something like that. And I mean, just like you said, the patience level is just like way down. I just don't have a lot of tolerance for much these days.
I know. It wears thinner and thinner. It's, I think you start looking at, I've kind of paid my dues when it comes to a lot of things. And, there's a certain level at some point where you're like, okay, I need some kind of self-gratification out of some of these elements and being cold all the fucking time in it. So,
well, it's a good excuse to drink, So.
It is. Yeah. Well, it is. Yeah. So cool, man. Well, I think, starting with you, obviously you've got a history that goes back quite a ways when it comes to death metal, and with the unfortunates of who gets recognized and who doesn't get recognized, Morta kind of fell into that envelope of probably not getting as much recognition as you guys probably deserved. So let's go way back and talk about your early involvement, getting into metal. And then we'll go, as we go through this discussion, I'd like to kind of get into things prior to starting the band. But from here, let's just start in with, what led up to the formation of the band and like the very, very early processes in Morta.
Sure. Well, I honestly, after high school, I tried to do some jobs, some things, whatever. Nothing was panning out, and I went into the Marine Corps, and I thought, well, I'm going to do this. This is going to be 20 years. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be retired. Cool. And I got in, and I really, kind of like a lot of things, maybe even like being in a band or being in your, podcaster. You get in, and then sometimes you're like, this isn't really something I want to do. So I had gone to Japan. Was stationed there for a year, met a good friend of mine. He was a singer from Pennsylvania, cover band guy, and him and I just really kind of gravitated. We were just listening to, I just remember touching the ground, and I just remember at the barracks, I hear this blaring music, and I don't know if it was Iron Maiden, Fate's Warning, something of that nature, and it was kind of like a Step Brothers thing. I ran in there, and I'm just like, did we just become best friends? He's like, yep, and it was just like that. And
that's the beauty of music, isn't it?
Oh, it really bonded him and I, and just such a super guy. And when I got out of the service, and when I was in service, there were some guys that were musicians. Every now and again, you'd be going through the barracks, and you'd hear somebody like playing Metallica or something, and I was like, wow, so these guys are actually playing, practice amps and all that stuff. And
Awesome.
some of the guys were really good. And I was like, huh. And I had always wanted to be in a band. I started trying to teach myself at 16. And unfortunately, my mother and I did not have the best relationship. So she had a lot of issues. And so I came home one day and all my equipment was like smashed. And that was really devastating to me. And then that's why I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be a musician, so I might as well go in the Marine Corps.
Sure.
And when I came out of the service, that was literally the first thing I did was I attended the Conservatory of Music here, which is like a local college. And I just took a rhythm course. And then as soon as I took that rhythm course, like instantly, like I'm like, all right, let's start a band. Who's in, I still could barely play. And I surrounded myself with a bunch of other guys that could barely play. And we formed a kind of like a MOD, because that's at that time I was in other types of metals, Testament and Laws Rocket and Anthrax and all that. But I really was like into the whole MOD, SOD things. I really liked their formula. The songs were short. They were kind of satirical. And, I just really liked that. So I tried that formula with the guys that I was playing with. And we, like a bunch of dummies, like we did our first demo in Minneapolis, knowing there's plenty of studios here in Wisconsin. But somebody had talked to us into going out there. So we went out there and
what studio did you hit in Minneapolis?
I couldn't even tell you the name of it. Somebody was like, oh, the big thing was there was a band called Disturbed, a thrash band.
Yep.
Earl and the singer, he just passed away last year. Now I'm feeling like I got Alzheimer's.
I know. I can't remember his name either,
right,
but I know who you're talking about. Yep.
Amazing guys. And they were our first exposure to like a band on tour. And they had come through town and they stayed with us. And they slept on our floor. And it was like the first time I actually saw an actual touring band personal. And they were like, oh, you got to go to the studio, man. It's where we cut our record. And Prince, he cut his album there and all this other stuff. And, we rolled into town and it was like, Prince was never here. This was definitely not the studio.
Right.
I'll never forget the first thing engineer said. Well, like, I'm not touching a knob or any buttons until I get 6 cases of beer. And me being so naive at the point, I was like, oh, okay. So we went and got the guy say 6 cases of beer. And, well, lo and behold, the demo turned out like ass.
Right.
So we drove up there in a van that our bass player's mom had bought for us, like $200. And we go all the way up there and come all the way back. And we're listening to demo on the way back. And I'm like, now mind you, my brain is, I'm already like Eric Peterson, Chuck Billy. I have that mentality of like professionalism, but I didn't have the talent. And so I'm bawling each and every one of these guys out on the road, like on the way home, like, you sucked and you didn't take this serious enough and you didn't da-da-da-da-da. And so we get home and literally every guy, but my bass player, Jason Hellman, which was started Morta Skuld with me, he was the only guy that stayed. And it was kind of like, oh, I guess there's 2 of us again,
Right.
And so he stayed and we reformed the band, same band, called Delayed. It was called Delayed Stress. And we reformed the band with a couple other guys that were a little bit better players. And really tried to make it work, and I think we did a couple shows like that. And then finally, a buddy of mine in town was like, we did this one weird thing, is we had a song, and every guy like switched instruments. So so and so went from drums to guitar. I went from guitar to vocals, and my buddy. And at that time, we were kind of like a party band. So we would have a lot of people over all the time. Always, people walking in with 12 packs in case of, all day long. And we started this, just rehearsal. And I went on vocals, and my buddy's like, hey, he goes, I really think you should sing. And I says, I have no idea how. I just goofing off here. It's like, well, your current guy isn't really cutting it. Like, he just doesn't have it. And I said, okay. So so anyways, long story short, we're like, hey, well, if I get rid of this guy, I don't know how to write lyrics. I don't know how to put, sing and play. And so my buddy kind of helped me through that and kind of helped me write some of the lyrics, some of the placements, which eventually became the first demo, Gory Departure. And so we had changed the name at that point. The lineup had changed a little bit. I had moved from vocals or from guitar to guitar and vocals. And then we went into a really nice studio called Wave Digital with Eric Reif, who used to manage Death and all that good stuff.
Yep.
So that's kind of where it kind of landed at that point.
Sure.
And then we did the first 2 demos, and of course we had another lineup change with the second demo, and then right before we got signed to Peacevill, we did another lineup change, and then at that point I had really felt that this lineup is really solid. I had a lot of really talented guys, and then Peacevill, one more like 3 a.m. I got a call from Peacevill and like, hey, what's up?
So how did that come about? They reached out to you through just hearing your stuff, or?
Yeah, after we did the first demo, like back in the old days, tape trading was very popular, and we tape traded with a lot of people, and we were starting to get bags of like groceries, but bags of mail, and I literally, like, that kind of became my job for a while, was to respond to all these letters because there were so many of them.
Right.
And they were from everywhere, Singapore and Russia and Thailand and Poland and UK. I mean, everywhere. And they had, Peacevill had said, we see that your demos are really kind of making a splash in all these fanzines. And we really like what we're hearing. And, you guys seem to have a really good, kind of underground following right now. So they were like, we'd like to offer you a 3-record contract. And so that's kind of where it started.
That's awesome. I mean, it's because so the band that I got into, and which it's crazy weird that we haven't bumped into each other.
I know,
because we're not that far apart.
No.
So I started with a band called Suffer back in 1989, and we played like Minneapolis fests and a bunch of that regional stuff quite often. So I'm sure we probably
have played,
skimmed by each other or been next to each other at some point. But being from where we're from, I mean, we're sandwiched between nothing and nowhere.
Yeah.
And I had a slight connection with Matt Jacobson for a minute, but his concern was the same thing as like, you guys, you got to relocate because you're in the middle of nowhere. Like you're not going to get any attention here and whatnot. So it was, difficult for us to make any headway doing anything. And then, I think for us, it was like the fire. You almost need something to kind of push you at some point to make you feel like you're making progress. So that's awesome that connected with you guys. So your relationship with Peacevill, is that something is that where you're still at?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, we originally started on Def Records, which was a sub-label of Peacevill. So Dying Remains, which is the first record, came out on Def Records, and then they were bought out by, I want to say, Music for Nations.
Okay.
By the second album, and at that point, Peacevill was like, or Def Records was like, we're cutting our roster, and then Peacevill, I think, picked up 2 of us. I think it was us, and it was either Anathema or My Dying Bride. It was one of the 2. Maybe I could even be wrong on that, but they picked up 2 of us to go on to Peacevill, and then they renegotiated our contract and all that good stuff, and then it was like, okay, now we're officially on Peacevill. But yeah, we still are with them. Yes,
that's awesome. Usually relationships don't, especially between band and label, don't last like that. So that's
no. Well, and there's 2 different guys. There was Hammy. So Hammy, he originally was the guy that we started with, and then eventually Paul Growl took over, and then and they're both named Paul. Hammy's other name is, his first name is Paul. So it's like, okay, the 2 Pauls. And then I had started talking with Paul in like 2000 something, and we were just talking and stuff, and I had a different band put together at the time, and it's like, hey man, you want to sign us? And he was like, no. And I'm like, what? I was really mad at him too. I was like, man, screw you. Like, that's it. But it wasn't that style. It wasn't death metal, and it definitely didn't fit Peaceville's roster.
Sure.
So I completely understand why. But him and I have been, like I said, talking since the early 2000s.
So when you first got signed on with Peacevill, that is early 2000s, or when are we talking here? When this?
No, we first signed to Peacevill in 1991.
Yeah, I was gonna say early 90s had it been.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about those first couple years and stuff. So that's obviously in the infancy of things, so to speak. I mean, some of that early rumblings were maybe late 80s, but going through early 90s, probably even 92 to 94, 95 is when we're talking the eruption of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like in the thick of it.
Yeah.
So talk about how that was for you guys. I know there's probably some lineup maneuvers and things that are going.
Sure.
How were you involved in tour life at that point? Were you doing support for records, or how was it for you then?
We honestly never toured. The early years we never toured.
Mm-hmm.
Never. Not once. I guess our claim to fame, so to speak, if you want to call it that, was Milwaukee Metal Fest.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Koshik, who had owned the Milwaukee Metal Fest, was nice enough to offer us an opening slot. I think it was in 1991 at like 9:25 a.m. in the morning. It was like, we'll give you 15 minutes, and that's where it started. And then Jack also brought a lot of bigger bands to our area, so he was always booking Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think, just Autopsy, Obituary. We probably supported Obituary half a dozen times when they came to town. So that's really kind of what propelled us forward. But when we did the record in 1991, the record didn't get released till 93.
Wow.
Something happened with the label. They were like, I don't know if it was money or really what it was. So because ironically, we have a song called Rotting Ways, and so does Obituary. Obituaries was first. Ours was first, but our record
was released first.
Right.
Yeah.
Theirs was released first. So that's why you have that. But yeah, so and then 93, and we were just waiting for the record to come out. And then once that record came out, we really saw a lot of press, a lot of fanzines, and a lot of radio airplay. And things were like, oh wow, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is really cool, we really played to a lot of our influences. So, Bolt Thrower and Paradise Lost and Tombed, we kind of just threw that all in the mix for that record, and just kind of that's what our favorite bands were at the time. And then ironically what happened was I unfortunately I met somebody and decided that, I should get married. I should have kids. And it was the wrong person to settle down with. And so I started having a lot of issues in my band life. And the band guys and because I was actually in the middle of recording Dying Remains. And I remember, now I talked with my old drummer Kent, because he has a better memory than me. Obviously, over the years of drinking and stuff like that, the brain isn't so good. But he's always been sober, never touched anything. So I kind of, sometimes I'll call him like, hey, what, 1990, do you remember, can you tell me? And he'll, oh yeah. Or,
Mm-hmm.
So he had said at that point that I had started, and this happens to a lot of us, where you get with somebody, they kind of take a little bit more control over your life than you'd like.
You bet.
And then you listen to them a little bit more than you probably should. And I was really just starting to not come to rehearsal as much, things of that nature. And it kind of, my playing kind of suffered through the Dying Remains process. I was kind of having a hard time. I wasn't focused. I wasn't concentrating as much as I should. Even though the material obviously had been already written and we had been well practiced. So after the record had come out, the guys and I was still with this person, and the guys were just like, you're not coming to rehearsal. What's going on? And so at that point, my immature brain was like, well, screw you guys. You're not the founder. You're not the, whatever. You're not the singer. you don't write the lyrics, or well, I shouldn't say it. We all kind of took a little bit turns on Dying Remains. But I just kind of was like, no, I just, I was real kind of full of myself, like some young people are. And I just, with a little bit of the, I don't know if you want to call it fame or acolytes or whatever you want to call it, from playing in front of Metal Fest in front of 1,000 people, or opening for Obituary or Autopsy or anybody. We really opened for a lot of really awesome bands, and so we always had a really good crowd exposure. And I don't know if that went to my head, just being egotistical, and I was like, well, screw you guys, I don't need you. And they were like, well, we don't need you either. And I was like, all right, fine. I'll take my, paddle and ball and I'll go home. And so I ended up actually kind of doing that. So I ended up going on my own. And there was a band in town that their singer had gone and auditioned for Cynic or something like that. And they were just sitting around doing nothing. And it was exactly what I needed. It was a guitar player, bass player, drummer. I said, this is awesome. I said, hey, do you guys want to jam with me? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And we just started kind of just playing together, and played a couple shows. And we did write some material, which unfortunately has been lost, which really sucks because the guitar player has since passed away. So it kind of, passed away with him.
Right.
Yeah, it's really sad. So anyway, so we're kind of doing this, back and forth. I had this band. I didn't really know what the other three guys were doing. And we happened to meet up at a party. So there's a famous band, or a band back in the day. It was really famous, called Realm, thrash band. And my drummer Kent was actually playing with them. And it was like this big house party. So of course the other three members of Morta Skuld were there, and then I was there. And it was kind of like, you're there and you're like, I don't know, like an old girlfriend, like, well, why did we break up? Why did we split? And oh, we love you, all that, weird stuff after you get a couple of liquid courages in you.
Right.
And they're like, well, we've got all this material written. And I was like, what? And he's like, oh, we got this material written. Why don't you come over to the house and just see if you like anything? And I was like, all right. So I came over to their house, and so we were in like for Dying Remains, we were in drop C. And then they had tuned up to D standard. So that was new for me, because I hadn't, even when I went to the conservatory, I only played in like E standard for like a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
I've never, otherwise.
I never have.
Right. That was it. That was my first time in only a couple of weeks, and that was it. Otherwise, I've always been drop tuned.
Yeah.
So then when I went over to the house, it was like, okay, I was kind of like a spectator, and I'm just sitting there watching them play the material. And I was like, well, I kind of like that song a lot. And then I don't like that song so much, but I like that song. And they were like, oh, okay. And so I was like, how are you guys doing? And they're like, well, we can't find anybody to replace you. Like, we can't find a separate singer, and we can't find a separate guitar player or a singer guitar player. Like, we just can't find anybody. I said, well, I found a bunch of guys. I said, but unfortunately, their singer wants his band back. So I was like, oh, great. So I kind of lost those guys. And so, like I said, we're sitting there, we're talking about things. And I just said to him, I said, I'm a different place right now. I'm divorced or separated, whatever it was. I started kind of getting back into the mindset of being in a band. And so we basically, we took I think maybe four of their songs, and then we wrote, I think maybe 6 or 7 more as a band. And then that became the As Humanity Fades record, which was the second record on Peacevill.
Sure.
So
cool. And one thing I want to jump back on real quick is when you mentioned opening slots and stuff like that, getting those opportunities back then. Nowadays, that is such a rare element in music, in extreme music right now, and it drives me ape shit. Like and I know I've complained about it before on other episodes, or a singular episode at least, for sure. But since you can kind of attest to that era, because that was a huge part of, for Suffer back then too, is like getting an opportunity and, representing your city or your region with, through this kind of fringe music, because it was absolutely insane. If you look at it from, say, through the Midwest, from even take 90 to 92, so 2 years, how wildfire death metal got
Yep.
across the United States, and I'm sure pretty much across the globe, but how it just exploded.
Yeah.
And the opportunity that came to a lot of bands, such as yourself, to have those opportunities to make those connections with, which I'm sure you still got friends in a lot of these bands, that if you, didn't get those opportunities, you just wouldn't have had an opportunity at all,
Yeah.
and
Well,
now it's like it doesn't hardly exist. And if it does, it's minimal.
right. Man, it definitely. Oh man, like the good old days. I'm showing my age now. Get off my lawn.
Right.
I really am, because I'm kind of like, oh, why didn't I relish that time more? Like I just wanted to be this rock star, and I just wanted to be this big band, and I didn't, I really wasn't paying attention or smelling the roses, so to speak, around
Right.
me. But it's funny you say that, because that's how I felt a couple years ago. We had played. We were blessed enough to play the UK Death Fest, which was the last one,
Oh,
and
nice.
I remember I felt like a kid in a candy store. I felt like it was 1991 again. I'm like, oh, I remember that guy. I remember, and even though I had lost touch with a lot of these guys for many, many years, I reintroduced myself, and a lot of them are like, oh yeah, I know, yeah, 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 okay, like Immolation,
Hmm.
Ross, and all those guys, like, hey, yeah, and Nuclear Assault, which one of my guilty pleasures, and I was fortunate enough to see them in like the late '80s a lot. And I mean, they didn't really remember too much, but there were some stories we shared. Oh, I remember that story, and so
Hmm.
and then playing with Autopsy. I mean, and we're label mates, and it was, and then seeing Carl from Memoriam, Bolt Thrower,
Hmm.
because I had seen him back in like 1992
Dude,
or
it's one
91
of
or
my
something.
all-time favorite bands, and
Oh,
I never got to see him.
he was so. This was this place. It was in a. It was on it was an old church, and it was restructured to have shows called Croatian Hall in Sheboygan. So it's about an hour or so away from here, north.
Hmm.
And they had the best shows. Just and you didn't. And the thing that I really missed about those days was you didn't have to beg anybody. You didn't have to. Oh, please come to my show.
Right.
People just came. People just
Hmm.
came. Hundreds. I have a videotape from a couple of the shows we did there, and it's insane how many kids came and enjoyed themselves. And I mean, just ridiculous. But I'll never forget it. I walked in; it was snowing too, and I was still at the time. I was still with this my ex-wife or whatever, and we weren't even married at the time. And I remember she had said like, "Well, I don't want to go to this show," and I said, "Well, I want to go." And I remember I drove in the snow up there, and as soon as I walked in, Carl saw me from the stage. No lie. I don't know if he remembers this, but I remember it. And as soon as I walked in, I mean, they're in the middle of a song, and he stops singing and starts talking to me and says, "Oh, you got to come up here, get up on, you get, get him up, get him backstage, and blah 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 blah, and this and this and that." Because back then, I had written all these guys. We were all pen pals. So
Right.
Nick A from Entombed
Hmm.
and Immolation and Suffocation, me and Frank, and I wrote somebody in Cannibal, probably Alex. But I was friends with all these guys, and so after the years, after I had stopped playing death metal, I lost contact with a lot of guys. But when I was at that UK Death Fest, it was like just the best. Like I thought, oh man, like, and I didn't feel like I don't know, like I didn't feel like, oh, it's this guy again, or
Right.
it wasn't
Right.
nothing like that. Everybody was very nice and respectful, and just were like, oh, dude, I'm so happy to see you got the band back together. Jason from Monstrosity, um, he was when he was with Terrorizer, he was playing in town, Turner Hall, and we hooked up briefly, took a picture. He's like, dude, I'm really I'm really happy that you got your band back together. And I was like, wow, I didn't think anybody cared. So I really appreciated it. So those were really golden opportunities, especially back in 91, 92,
Right.
and then not to mention the promoters throwing us some money on top of it, So wow,
Right.
we're playing with probably some of the bands that we idolized and kind of formulated maybe some of our craft after. And here I'm playing with these guys and I'm friends with these guys. And then at the end of the night, I'm getting a couple bucks. So, I mean, yeah,
Right.
it just,
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, I mean, when you mentioned kind of kicking yourself at, and I very much am in the same way, and I would say a lot of people didn't, you know, crest the hill, so to speak, when it comes to playing in a band, and kind of move on into that uh, legend status or whatever that a lot of those old school death metal bands have, is you do kind of regret it because it's the opportunity. You don't realize it until you're older, right?
right, right.
And being young and dumb and maybe just not as grateful as we are now that we're older and understanding that. But I think, from my perspective, it's why I still do what I do, is because when I look back, and I think you probably can agree with me on this, is like when you look back, like the shoulda, coulda, wouldas
Oh, yeah.
are
Oh, yeah.
only, for me, they're just motivation to keep doing what I'm doing because,
Right.
I know that I had the ability. I may have floundered that ability, but I still have a chance now to build friendships. And that's kind of, you start realizing, like with music, that's kind of the core of what it's all about, right? Is
Yeah,
when you're mentioning all these people who kind of motivated you and you're connecting with, and that's kind of the memory in the end that you're really shooting for. And I think now that you're a little more mature and kind of better centered, it makes more sense. And that's where I'm at, is like, with the podcast, or with my band stuff, I do a crap ton of stuff with guest musicians, and it's all bucket list people that
that's awesome.
that kind of changed my world scope, not only in music, but in self-identification and just who I
Sure.
am as a musician and whatever. So it makes it worthwhile now. And now is
Right,
kind of what matters,
right. Well, what the weird thing about that too is, with getting back to Carl, is that I have this picture of us from, like I said, 1990, 91, whatever it was. And we looked like a couple of little girls, we're like all young looking. We're like, oh, and he was such a big influence on me, lyrically. And I loved his vocal style.
Hmm.
And so when I knew we were playing with them, or, in the same venue, and it was weird because we got swapped. Like they were supposed to play the venue we were playing, and then we were supposed to play the venue they were playing. I think it was called the Underworld in the UK. And I never forget. As soon as we were done playing, I'm like, what's going on? And like Memoriam was playing literally, like, I don't know, minutes after we had stopped. So I'm literally running down the street going like, where is this place? Where is this place? I'm in the UK. I don't know left or right. I don't know where I'm at. And they're like, oh, it's that. You take a left and stuff. And I'm like, well, I hope I remember to, where I'm going here. And I went into the venue and they were on. And it was almost the same thing. He didn't really start talking, but he saw me. He's like, oh, and he pointed to me and come on down. And, and we got another picture. And I just told him about, how it was awesome that, here it is, like 30, probably 30, maybe 30 plus years later. And we have not crossed paths since.
Hmm.
And at this time was the opportunity that we got to cross paths. And I'm so grateful for the guys at UK Death Fest. They're the Maryland Death Fest guys, and Evan and Ryan, that they gave us that opportunity to play that, because I had not seen a lot of these guys, even though they would come through town. It's like you said, back in the day, we had the opportunity. Now
Hmm.
they come through town, and like you don't get that opportunity as much anymore.
No, I think
Because
just
there's
the
a
disconnect is huge,
yes,
and
yeah.
and
Well, it's like, well, you went on with your life, I went on my life, but then, but even like the thing is with me and Frank from Suffocation, we were probably the only two guys at that time that were married and had a kid.
hmm
That was just really uncommon back then.
hmm
And so him and I kind of bonded over that. And I think it was Metal Fest, I think it was 97 or 98. We were playing the Milwaukee Metal Fest, and they were on, and we were scheduled to play after them. And I was like, come on. Like, are you serious? I'm like, who in the F made this? Really? Are you serious? Come on, man.
Right,
And
right.
and I'll never forget it. I was on the side of the stage. I'm nervous as hell. He just finished his set. He comes up, puts the mic in my chest, and goes, "Your turn to go kill it." And I was like, how how am I how am I supposed to follow that? You know what I'm saying? Like these
Yeah,
guys just, you know what I mean? They're like one of the OGs of the OGs, and just brutal.
I
And
know. They were just, it still are. I mean, that,
right.
like,
I got to meet. I'm
one
sorry,
of
I got to
those,
meet.
go
Go ahead.
ahead. Well, one of the stuff, just to step on that, is like they were one of those bands that stepped out of the gate firing on every single cylinder,
Oh,
and
amazing,
you know,
amazing.
they
I
deserve
I
everything they've ever gotten. That's for sure.
I completely agree. And they played. They played here in a couple of years, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, whatever. And I ran into Terrence, and he was like, "Hey, what's up, Dave?" And I was like,
Good
"What?" Like
guys, man. Really good guys.
oh, and that's the one thing too that I think really is a lot too, and why I do this too, is because there's so many good guys
Oh,
in this style of music.
100%, hundred
And like
percent.
you said, it's like a friendship. And when you meet that guy, and you become friends with them, like when you had Pierce on,
Hmm.
I became really good friends with him, and Skeletal, and I'm still good friends with Skeletal and all those guys. And I just really, really nice guys. And just to go on a run with them for 3 or 4 days was just a blast. I mean,
It's cool in music, that when there's such a common ground,
yes,
that I think it's easy to build those bonds to where, everyone's separated by 1,000 miles at all times, and some of my greatest connections I've either barely or never met face to face. It's so
right.
much in passing this, that, and the other, and like James Murphy, for example. I've been working in one fashion or another with James, since the first Anger Out record, which is, what, 7 8 years ago, whatever. And we talk all the time, and everything's, it's like, but we've never even met,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's
it's weird about him too, because I had never really met him before. Um, but like back in the day of the Metal Fest, he was with, I can't even remember, maybe Cancer he came over with, or I can't remember, but he came over, and we were just so excited to like hang out with him. And like we brought him to our house. We wanted to play a song or two for him. And every time we had breaker problems at the time.
Hmm.
So every time we'd fire the band up, we'd lose a breaker, we'd lose all power. And so he just literally just I had I think a Jackson Rhodes V at the time, and he just picked it up and was just shredding. And we're like, oh, I
Hmm.
guess we'll get you back to your show, or whatever, and this and that. And I mean, we don't chat often, but he'll message me every now and again through Facebook and be like, hey, what's up and stuff. And he's, again, like you said, one of the nicer, just a nice guy in the scene, and
Yeah.
very talented guy as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, okay, so you go through your first stint with Morta, and then
Mhm.
was there a pause that happened?
Yeah, so we had three records with Peacevill.
Hmm.
So the last one was For All Eternity. And that was like, I think, 95, 96, where the music really wasn't, oh man, I don't even know how to say it, because I know I've seen other people interview about this, and they're like, well, grunge came in and it killed everything, and this and this and that. And I don't know if that's really the truth, because from what I've heard other people speak of these grunge guys, like they weren't, like that wasn't their intent, was to
Right.
like wipe out a style of music or anything like that. They were
No.
just like us. They just wanted to play, they play their instruments and be good at it and whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know if that's really but the music did shift. It
It
really
did.
did.
I think what happened
Yeah.
is label interest and media interest shifted,
Yes.
but the underground never went away. I mean,
No.
bands plowed
Right.
through all that stuff. So I think like a lot of bands who didn't
Right.
get all of the media attention and all the whatever were just like, what? Nothing. Everything's
Right.
it's fucking same. Whatever, doesn't matter to me. But it was all those bands that were playing, to 3,000 people, and now they're playing back to playing for 200 300 people
Right.
or whatever. That's where the shift was. So I agree,
Right.
because we just kept playing and plowing right through all that stuff too, because we never had the attention or the
Right.
draw that the big guys did. So
Yeah, I kind of wish I wish we would have plowed through it, but unfortunately, and I've heard, and I had now this isn't. I'm not quoting. I'm not. This isn't coming from me. But I have a really good friend of mine. I wish I could remember his band's name, but real popular back in like 88, 89 in Florida. He knows everybody in Florida. Everybody knows him, my buddy Pete. And he basically, him and I were talking about that one day about who got recognized, who didn't. And he said, well, he goes, unfortunately, he goes, there's some bands that got the golden ticket and yours wasn't one of them. And I'm like, I appreciate the honesty. I really do. But he said, that's just how it is. He goes, and there were some bands, and this is, like I said, this is coming from him. He's like, I feel like there were some bands that got the ticket that shouldn't have gotten it. And
I won't argue that. I won't argue that.
Right. So I was kind of like, okay, all right. You know, I guess, you know, whatever. So we had kind of done a little bit of a shift. And so long story short, we had finished our 3 records for Peacevill. We wanted to do another record, and I think they had declined. So we're like, okay, fine. We're going to look for a label ourselves. And like you said, at the time, the labels had shifted, you know, all the attention and everything had shifted and it was changing. And so we were like, all right, screw it. You know, we wrote 4 songs. We went in and we did a demo of the 4 songs and we shopped it. We didn't get anywhere. We're like, ooh, this is rough. You know, like 5 years ago, you know, we would have probably had our pick. So we were really discouraged. And at this point, this was kind of at the height of the band with that particular lineup of, it was Jason O'Connell, Jason Hellman, myself, and Ken Truckenbrode. And so all 4 of us had done the first 3 records, and then we're doing the 4th record. So we had gone in and did the first set of demos, didn't get any interest. So we were like, well, we're going to do a second set of demos, and then if we don't get any interest, then we're just going to put the record out ourselves. And so that's what we did. We went to Monster Disc in Chicago. We mastered it with somebody. We put the artwork together with somebody. Actually, Chris from Internal Bleeding actually did the layout for that record.
Awesome.
Right. And so we did all this stuff, and we're like, okay, we're pressing up our own copies. And then as soon as we do all of this, Pavement comes to us and says, hey, can we license the record? I'm like, oh man,
it's like a whole new era when that started happening. That was that. Now that you mention that, that is like the birth of that in extreme music, right? Is like all of a sudden, hey, we'll license that now that you've paid for everything.
Yes.
Jump on that grenade.
Yeah. You're like, okay, so we spent a couple of grand, whatever it was. I don't know, a couple thousand or maybe even more. Like, hey, you mind if we pick the record up? We're like, no, cool, go for it. So that went from 97 into 98. They put the record out. I honestly think they did one ad. I saw one ad in the now defunct Hit Parader.
Yeah, well, that's the shit which
I saved because I remember Metal Maniacs, Hit Parader were like the bomb. So they took out one ad, and then our guitar player, Jason O'Connell, had left. So as soon as we were done with Surface, like he took his stuff and he left, and I was like, "What? Where's his amp? Where's his stack?" And he's like, "Oh, he left. He went to join another local band or whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's odd." Like nobody told me, of course. So I'm like, okay. So we had got Scott in the band at that time, and then Scott was kind of just doing shows. I think we did a show at Immolation in Chicago, and then we did a couple shows. There were a couple of shows, and then we wanted to do a tour. My buddy Tim King, that was in Oppressor at that time, was doing this tour with Nile and Gorguts, and it was called Death Across America, and he offered us a tour, and because we had been offered like 1, maybe 2 tours during our entire 8 years of with that lineup, and some reason we were always turning it down. I don't know if it was my drummer, because I know my drummer at the time was in school. He was going to college. He was working full time, doing the band full time. So I don't know if that was one of the reasons. And of course, back then it was a brotherhood. If one guy didn't do it, we just didn't do it. Not like today where you get fill-ins and stuff, which is to me a lot more sense. It's like, well, why would you pass up on a really good show when you can get somebody to fill in for the show? And of course, that just wasn't where our mentality was.
Mm-hmm.
So we passed on, I think, a tour at Morbid Angel and something else, which I could kick myself now for. And then basically, Surface came out. I never forget it. We did one show. They were doing a show in Detroit, and so it was like Oppressor, Nile, Gorguts, us, and like nobody showed up. Like there was like 2 people. So there was all the band members, 2 people. I was like, oh wow, like this. Wow, okay. I wasn't used to that. I was used to 400 or 500 people or 1,000 people. So that really, to me, started like it was just showing me the state of where extreme music was, and we had, like I said, we had done a couple of shows after that. Everything was cool, and then my drummer had come to us and said, "Hey, I'm starting a family now. I just don't want to do this anymore." And I'm like, this really blows. I'm like, we just did 4 records with you. The last record, which was Surface on Pavement, which I felt was probably our most refined album, just with not only the musicianship, but just the songwriting. We were at our peak, and I was like, okay, here we are now. And then, of course, we're on a label that really didn't support us very well. They didn't do a lot of advertisements. They just were like, we're going to, like a spaghetti noodle, we're going to throw it to the wall. If it sticks, cool. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that was a very short-lived record deal. And so, like I said, so he left. And then at that point, I was like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I tried to resurrect the band. We tried to think of all these drummers in town. And at that point, not only was the labels and the music shifting, but the musicians were shifting too.
Completely.
Yeah, and they didn't want to play death metal. They didn't want to play double bass. They were like, "Hey, let's play Nirvana or let's play Soundgarden."
Play to nobody.
Right. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to play that type of stuff, single kick stuff and all that. And I was like, "No, man, I still want to do the double bass, full out, everything else." And so I tried for probably about a good year, and I just tried, and we just couldn't find anybody. Like, and the guys that we were finding were like, so I hate to say it, they were just second rate. They were just really not good drummers. Right. Just couldn't play very well. And we're like, we just came from 4 albums with Kent, and we had this bar, and none of these guys they just weren't rising to the occasion. So we were just like, and of course Jason Hellman again stuck with me. So this was probably like the 3rd process in 8 or 9 years that he was with me, and we were the only two guys left standing.
Sure.
So he had started writing a lot of he started doing a lot of demoing. I never forget it. I bought like a 4-track, a cassette, like a Tascam, and I bought like a little mixer and a drum machine. And him and I were working at a music store at the time, so I just bought this gear, and he was so much better at it than I was. I couldn't program a drum to save my life, and he'd come in with these songs, like completely done, the guitars, everything, bass, and I'm just like, wow, like these are sounding pretty good. And what we did is we used those songs to audition the new guys, and they just couldn't, they just, the fast double bass, nobody could either do it or had no interest in it. So right. I told him, I says, you're a bass player, I'm a guitar player. He was getting offers from all kinds of local bands, and I was like, you know what, just why don't you just do a Fleetwood Mac, go your own way, because I feel like I'm holding you up here, Mm-hmm. And he was a little more talented than I was too. He went to college for music, so he understood a lot more music theory and stuff like that. So he went off to join a couple other local bands, and then that's when I had started a newer band. I thought I had tried out for a couple other bands. Nobody seemed interested in having me. And then him and I actually, before we did call it quits, we did start a band with a friend of mine from Schaumburg, Illinois, and it was called Mindset Zero. And this guy was phenomenal. I mean, in his bedroom, he had stacks, like in his bedroom, he had like this condo. He had stacks, and he had a big mixing board, and he would like he just handed us a tape. He said, "Here you go. Here's the songs." He had like 8 or 9 songs, and they were complete vocals, drums, samples all over the place. It was kind of like a, I don't know, like a Rob Zombie kind of meets Fear Factory type thing. And I was like, all right, screw it, And so we started doing that for a while. And what I'm leading up to is he let me go. He said, well, you're too death metal. I said, I don't understand. I'm playing your material. He goes, well, you're just playing it too death metal. I'm like, all right, fine. So I don't know what that means. So at that point, it led me to try to kind of resurrect the band, and a lot of people around town were just like, Morta Skuld, you can't let it go. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't, so I wanted to change the name, and unfortunately I did something really corny. I started like this MS2 thing, which it had nothing to do with Morta Skuld, the origins whatsoever. So it didn't go over very well. And then as I started thinking more about stuff and I always wanted to be like this crazy shredder guy. But I just never really, I just didn't have the patience. And so I wanted to concentrate on being a songwriter, writing songs. And so that's what this opportunity came along. And I was like, hey, I said, how about if I let all that go, start something a little newer? And it was kind of like I don't even know what you'd call it. People. Everybody said it was new metal because the singer we had did sing. He did brutals and sing. So I guess that was like the nomenclature for new metal.
Yeah.
And we started that band. I started it from ground up, and we just kind of hacked our way through Battle of the Bands and benefits and playing in front of moms and dads and just all kinds of crazy stuff. And then we started getting some opening slots for some bigger bands like Five Finger Death Punch, stuff like that. So I was kind of, oh, cool, and it was so weird because when that music was like right here, we we were here and it was already on the down.
What year are we talking here?
We're talking like 2004, 2005.
Okay.
So so I kind of went from that to this, and then invested a lot of money into the band, and the recordings, and we were always doing demos constantly, and we were doing like we hired Skateboard Marketing to do a radio campaign for us, and all this stuff where I'm like, ooh, we're big time now because we're doing this radio campaign, and just stuff that's like bigger bands, radio bands have done that I was not used to. So I kind of went on to start doing that, and we did that for a little while, and like anything else, it ran its course, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And I'm one of those guys where I have to be motivated. You have to dangle a carrot in front of me to motivate me. Whether whether it's writing a new song or learning something, I have to have a carrot in front of me. If I don't have a carrot in front of me, I don't even like to play. It's like I have to have something to kind of motivate me. And so I just wasn't motivated at all. And that's when Eric Greif had come back into my life, and was like, hey man, I'd really like to hear those first 2 Morta Skuld demos on CD. So how about if I pay for the studio and you go in there and slap it on CD so I can have a copy? And it's like, all right, yeah, sure, And as the music, as I was listening to stuff, I hadn't listened to it for years. I was listening to music, and I'm like, wow, that's what that was. Okay. And then he just bugged me. I mean, literally, just was on me like all the time. You should get the band back together. I was like, I feel removed from it because I had been doing this radio or new style, whatever you want to call it. I had been doing that for so many years already. Because I think I started switching over in like 2001, 2002, and then I know the band went from like 2004, 5-ish to 2010 or 11, and so right around the 2011 mark is when the I put all those demos on CD for him, and then he was working with Relapse, and he was reissuing all the Death stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, "Hey, man," he's just like, "I'm running the publishing for Chuck. Even Chuck obviously had passed away, but I'm running all his publishing, and if you want to release these demos through Relapse, I'll throw it on Relapse, and we'll put it through his publishing company." And I thought that was like the greatest thing, because I've always been a huge Chuck fan, and that's really where it all started for me. Was working at a record store called Radio Doctors in town, which was a really famous place.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting the Death Leprosy tape, because I would be pulling orders, and my friend was like, "Hey, this is a Death Leprosy tape. I think you might like this." And it was like, I put that tape in, and I was like, I want, this is what I want to do right here.
Right. That's a pretty big carrot too. You know what I mean? To get you motivated to do things again is to get a pretty solid opportunity to release things. I mean, it's in to kind of go on a little bit of a tangent. You and I kind of seem to run parallel lives in a certain degree when it comes to this stuff. Cause like, with Suffer, there was a flat tire moment, like with anything, where, my motivation fleeted because of this very similar finding, I think it's a Midwestern thing. You don't have a very deep pool of option. No. So, once that dries, and especially when it comes to a drummer, you're just like, well, fuck, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But my motivation to get back into that again, which was actually, 2012 or somewhere around in there, whatever, was because of an outside pressure. Because we had a bunch of material that we never released, exact same scenario as yours. And he's like, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. And eventually you're just like, fuck. And then you listen to it and you're like, maybe I should, for, even personal reasons. When you get to there, is like, you know what, where I came on a lot of that stuff was like, with my awakening there was leaving material unattended when you put your life into it is a mistake. Absolutely. I don't care what band you're in. I don't care how big or small that band was. If you put the effort into it, finish it. And it's just, if I can give a tip of advice to any musician out there, is never leave it hanging. Just finish it, because it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Right. It's your personal deal. If you don't commit and finish, you're going to regret it. So it's nice that happened for you and you got that opportunity. Yeah. And I'm sure that was the catalyst to take you to where you are right now.
Well, yes. I get back to what you said though, is I do regret letting the band go though. Mm-hmm. I really do. Like, I know a lot of bands that went through a lot of hard times around that same era, and they stuck it out. And I've been told this by people, I don't know whether it's true or not, but the reason why we aren't maybe, as like you said at the beginning of the podcast, as popular or sought after, is because of that period of time where we didn't tour. And I mean, kind of going back, is we did have an opportunity to tour off of that Surface record. And that's something I forgot to mention. And the thing is, we were supposed to go out with like 6 Feet Under, Master, whatever, a couple dates. And my drummer got sick. And we look back now, we go, were you really sick? Was it psychosomatic? He was having his first kid. He was on the road. He was away from home.
Nervous. Yeah.
He did not like to travel. Yeah. And we literally had to scrap the whole thing. And I've heard from other outside sources, other musicians, in our genre, was like, that's what hurt you. That's what hurt you.
For sure.
That's
and
why,
I could see that.
That's why.
I can see that. I mean, even talking like when I talked to Scott from Brutality, they went through very much the same thing then, where like the tour and the committing to tour, because it's not just you. It's back then, like you mentioned, it's everybody. And if everybody's not on board, then the boat doesn't leave port. Yeah. And, if you don't do it and you don't just take that chance, then those opportunities, those doors close.
Yeah. It was very much all for one for all. I mean, very much so. Yeah. And, we got back home, our tails between our legs, and we're just like, fuck, what do we do now? Mm-hmm. And I remember Pavement let us go. I mean, we lost everything. We lost our manager. We lost everything. So that was another catalyst for me to let it go and to do something else, was because I'm like, I kind of lost everything at that point, and not a lot of people were really willing to take a chance on us, and they're like, "Oh, you went on tour and you blew it." So, but I have heard from other musicians like, they're like, "That's your Achilles heel," or
Yeah.
that's it. Still kind of hurts you till this day, even though we have toured since. Not like, I don't know, touring is touring, but like we haven't toured with any like major. I mean, we did a short tour at Massacre, and we did a short tour in South America with Malevolent. So those, and then of course we did do a short run with Skeletal, but like nothing like, nothing like where I see my buddies in Skeletal and they're like opening for like, Morbid Angel and, and
Grinders.
Obituary every night.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, like how does that happen? Because those are great opportunities. But times have changed.
They definitely have.
Business has changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about it's not about being buddies and friends much anymore. It's more, it's business. It's
It is. And it's not like, I think previously touring was like to use artillery terms, it was like a machine gun, right? You just fire as many rounds as you can. And now it's like sharp placement of material, right? So you're dropping a bomb here, you're dropping a bomb there, you're hitting the things that matter.
Mhm.
You're it's much more centralized and focused, I think, especially for, well, even for major bands, that's why they have the festival circuit. That's why they do these things. Like,
Right.
Yeah, there's bands that go and grind it out on tour, but it's usually not just a band. It's 4 bands that they know they can collectively draw,
Yes.
which then it kind of goes back to our earlier statement, which pinches out the you and I's of the world, but it has changed and changed to a level that it's almost like I wish I could see an out, like how it's going to work out in the future,
Right.
but
Yeah. I don't know. It's all changed. I mean, I've tried to, I've tried everything I feel I can try at this point to try to further the, I don't know what you want to call it. I don't know if you want to call it success or popularity,
yeah, it's tough, man.
But
It's really tough.
it is. I've told people, I said, it is tougher now. I'd say, well, we did our comeback in 2012, and I said I really work a lot harder now than I did back in the 90s. Way harder, way harder. I mean, you can ask my wife. I'm always on my phone. We're on vacation. She goes, "Come on, Dave, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I just got, so and so just asked me if we could do this or so and so, and then, and then not only if then I get that, then I got to talk to my other guys, and I'm messaging with them. Hey, can you guys do this? Is everybody cool with this? And then and you're going back and forth, and and then it's sometimes it's about business, sometimes it isn't. It's my hat's off to the bands that are obviously killing it, like Skeletal and those guys. I mean, my hat's off to them because it's not easy. It just isn't, and especially
cracking the glass now is insanely difficult.
Yeah,
like for bands to be heard and to cut through all the static and the noise. Like I always say, it's my hat goes off to each and every band in this modern era who can find a way to do it.
Yeah, I completely concur. That was a great way to put it.
It's tough, man. It's tough. So you were saying 2012, you kind of relit the fire.
Yeah.
So where are we at today? What's the status? What's going on? I mean, are you guys playing shows? Are you, is it a functional machine at this point? Like,
awesome.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, we rehearse. Unlike some, because I know some bands don't. I mean, they don't. Some bands don't live in the same state. We do. But Adam and John both come from a town called Appleton, which is north of me, about an hour and a half. And Scott, when Scott was actually did the last 3 records with us too. He's actually from that area. So they both travel about an hour and a half. We try to do at least once a week. Old school, just get together in the basement, hash out the set, whatever we're getting ready for. We've been really like last year was a really good year for us. I mean, we were able to play Mexico and South America, and we did a stateside tour and Europe, and it was a really good year for us. This year was a little bit tougher, like we said, it's getting a little bit harder. We had a couple of really good supporting gigs with Coroner and Deceased when they came around our area, and then we did a small U.S. run, and that's what we kind of tend to do. It seems like if we can't get on a major tour, a big tour, we'll just do a tour ourselves, and then we'll take out a young band who maybe is up and coming, or we've taken out like Mutilatred and just a bunch of other like smaller bands that are like kind of, you could see them exploding or becoming or breaking through that barrier, and so we kind of like to do that, because then it's like we look at it as when we headline, because we always headline our own tours, but then it's like we know that if it doesn't work, then it's on us. It's like if it works and we pull in a good show, then we know it's because of us. If we don't pull in a good show, then we know it's because of us. So it's like we're not. I mean, don't get me wrong. Would I love to tour with some bigger bands? Absolutely, I would. And we've had some offers. Unfortunately, as you know, business sometimes doesn't always work out. But like we really like doing that, because then, like I said, then it's us. It's and I'm not taking anything away from playing with a bigger band, but like, that let's say if we went out and we toured with Cannibal Corpse, well, we know that we're going to be playing in front of their fans. I mean, that's a given. Yeah. So when we do these smaller headlining tours with younger bands, it's on us. It's on us to bring it. It's on us. And so, like I said, so it's either us. We either make it or break it ourselves. And that way, we know if we have a bad show, we're like, well, maybe we need to play this area a little more. But yeah, we're definitely functional. Like I said, we did an album in 2024, Creation Undone.
It's a good record. It's a good record.
Thank you. We've done 3 records on Peacevill since we've been back. So Wounds Deeper Than Time, Suffer for Nothing, Creation Undone. But no, we are very functional. Right now we're working on Europe, a small run for Europe next year. We did just get an amazing blessing, an amazing. We're going to be at Milwaukee Metal Fest again this year.
Excellent.
So yeah, that was so this will be our 10th performance. I don't know who's got the running or the record for.
It sounds like it might be up there.
I think I might be, but yeah, but I don't know who's got the record. But so far, this will be 10 for us. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's good to see that taken back off again and seeing.
Oh yeah, well, and
some good hands behind it. So
absolutely, and that was always our. How can I say it? Like we cut our teeth on Milwaukee Metal Fest back in 1991 with Napalm Death.
Right.
So I mean, I'm sorry, 91 was when we played. I'm sorry, that's when we first played the area with a national band. But otherwise than that, yeah, every year almost every year we played Milwaukee Metal Fest, and it's such a great organization now. Was back then, it is now. We're very, very happy that they asked us to do it. We played the first year it was back in, I think, 2023 we played, and we just had an amazing response. Like I was, but that's where we cut our teeth. We started 91 playing at 9:30 in the morning, and then the next year it was 10:30, and then it got bumped up, and
right.
And then next thing you know, it's 8:30, and you're playing After Suffocation, going, why would you do this to us? Like seriously, like thank you, Jack, for putting Suffocation on before us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I've never had the blessing of playing it. Some of the guys that are in Anger Out with me, they're one of their previous bands that was like right after Suffer, played it I think 96 or 98. But yeah, something I haven't been lucky enough to be involved with, but it's absolutely been in my mind one of the cornerstone Midwest anchor points. And I think, with it being pretty much your backyard, you can see what it's done for the Midwest as a whole, musically, death metal wise.
I feel like it kind of, back in the 91, 92, it was Florida.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it became Florida, Milwaukee.
Right.
And, and I think it was due to that. And yeah, and it is my backyard. I live like 15 minutes away. I used to work there as an employee. So I was a production assistant there for probably 3, 4, or 5 years on and off. I used to be a stagehand. So, I mean, I've worked for some, huge bands that have come through that venue. And not to mention, before the band had broke up in 98, we were really lucky enough to open for Slayer. So that was like a real, like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, we're gonna do this,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. The manager's like, you got 20, you got 10 minutes to set up. If you're not set up in 10 minutes, each minute that you take, we're taking away from your set.
Yep.
And I was just like, oh, we got to get going. And so we finished, and I think we had 2 minutes to spare. And he's like, we're giving you an extra 2 minets. And we're just like, okay, cool, So yeah, that place has a lot of fond memories for me.
Good. Well, it's good that you're still rolling and stuff. And I know the last record, it's like now the scope of when you're releasing material, everyone's attention span's so short that,
Yes. Yes.
look, so 24 is basically like just happened, but are you guys working on new material? Or are you still riding on what you got for the moment? Like, how's your writing process go
Right.
between albums now?
So Scott had left the band like 2 years ago, and so he finished the recording with us and all that, and I think we did a couple of shows. Then he decided to leave at that point, which was really heartbreaking for me because him and I have been the guitar writing team for the past 3 records, and we got to a really good chemistry where I'd write a riff and then he would know exactly like what to come with after it, and we just had this. I don't know, that's just weird. It was just such an amazing chemistry. So when he left the band, it took the wind out of my sails a little bit. And then Adam had come into the fold actually before Scott quit to do some European dates for us that Scott couldn't do. So Adam he played with us, like he went over to Europe and did I think it was it UK Death Fest and Killtown Death Fest, and so he came over and did a phenomenal job. And not only that, but he lives really close to John, our bass player. So so when Scott left, we were like, ooh, what do we do now? Like, who do we get? How do because excuse me, because as you know, it's not easy being in a band.
No.
There's the travel, the expenses, just having that guy in the band that's not gonna. I don't even know what to say, but just somebody that's gonna have that strength to push through maybe when some other people wouldn't push through.
Yeah.
Right. So Adam came aboard and just a real trooper. He's been playing with us for the last two years, and like I said, he did South America with us. He did Mexico with us. He did the UK run last year. So I mean, he's just a trooper and a really really gifted player on top of it. So like he's just Mr. Shred Machine. And so normally, and so getting back to your question is, right before Scott had left the band, we were working on a song. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to be really cool. Like, I really like where we're going with this song. And we get like maybe halfway through it, and then we stopped because we had to do some shows. And then, like I said, he left, and then it just kind of, it's lingering. And so for 2 years, I just been really fighting with myself because I'm like, well, should we write new material? Should we not? Going back to what you had just said, even though 2024 wasn't that long ago, it seems like everything's moving at light speed. And it's kind of like, if you don't have a song or a blip or something to be like, I'm over here, I'm right here, like people just kind of
they move on, man.
Well, they turn the page.
Short, yeah.
Right, they turn the page. And so they're like, oh, well, who are you guys? They're like, well, we just put an album out like a year ago, 2 years ago. Well, that's old news. Right. So I've been really fighting with myself on it because I'm like, do we do it? Do we go ahead and write new material and then risk the chance of like people going like, whatever? Because right now I feel there are so many bands out there right now that people obviously they can pick and choose what they want to listen to, but bands are forming like every day. Like it's almost like back in the 90s, it wasn't like that. It really wasn't. You had a few bands here and there, whatever, but like now it seems like I even have fans come up to us like, hey, I just started a band, and they're one band, they named it after our debut record, and then another song we have on the debut, I named my band Hatred Creation. I'm like, wow, this is cool, but weird at the same time.
Right.
So but these bands and these younger bands are like just rising so fast. You're like, they put a demo out, next thing you know it, boom, they're signed to Century Media or whoever, and you're like, holy crap.
So my thing on that is I'm very, very torn on what the reality of it is. So I'm not certainly convinced that there's more bands now. I would honestly think there's probably less. And I think there's less musicians. I think
Okay.
it's the access to content is extremely high.
Yes.
So where bands would fly under radar and never be heard and never break through, never have opportunity, they were always there, but you just didn't hear about them. To where now it's the internet, man. I mean, anyone can
Yeah.
put a record out at any given time. You don't even need a fucking record label. You don't
Right.
need a studio. You don't need anything.
That's very
You
true.
don't need other band members. So it's like you
Right. You don't need anybody.
you don't, man. And it's like now, like the ease of access makes it seem overwhelming. And with that, what I would say in defense of your position is that
Mhm.
experience travels miles. So when you have the experience and you know what it is to function as a band, and you have the road wear and history, you've got every advantage that you could ever pray for. You've got every advantage and experience that every new guy and every new band wishes they had. And so when it comes to that type of thing, as far as you're questioning what to do and stuff, man, I would just really, not that I need to give you any fucking advice or anything, but
No, I'm always I'm always open to advice,
is
because you know what? No matter how old I get, like they say, my wife always tells me, she goes, "Well, would you have taken that advice when you were 21?" And I was like, "No, probably I wouldn't." But now that I am older, I appreciate advice a lot more than I did.
right. So my advice is that it is to never quit grinding and do it at your pace and your comfort level. But new material is growth in every aspect. It's growth
That's
in,
true.
in relationships, it's growth in band status, it's growth in everything. So it's one of those things to where when you're ready to do it, and I wouldn't question it in any stretch. I would make sure that if you've got new material in you, you're doing it.
Nice.
'Cause-
Well, and that's kind of the thing that like we rehearse on Thursday nights, and I'll come home and I'll have a couple of beers, and then all of a sudden I'm like, my guitar's sitting right there, and
Mhm.
I don't know, like, and all of a sudden I write a riff, and then I videotape the riff and I put it in my catalog, and then like next Thursday comes along, I'm writing this. So Adam and I have been talking about getting together here shortly, because he's got a couple of really interesting riffs, and he his style's definitely different than mine.
Mhm.
And I always used to think that, oh, that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. You guys got to be similar, because Scott and I, even though Scott was, I don't want to say we were similar but different, but like we just locked real well, because
Chemistry.
we were real, like, just similar. And Adam and I too. I mean, we're locking up really well. I mean, we've been playing a lot of shows together, and he's just an amazing guy. And I thought, well, let's see what you got versus what I got, because obviously my riffs are kind of the signature of the band, so to speak, or the groundwork. And I just thought, well, maybe he'll come in with something different. He appreciates black metal a lot, and he had like a side project that was black metal and stuff. So he taps more into that side than I do. So I just thought, well, I don't know, maybe it might be interesting. Maybe there might be an interesting turn where he can put a little flavor on this, or whatever, and we can kind of maybe play off each other. Because the idea that I've really been toying with lately is just, why don't we write a song or two, we'll do a single, throw it up just like we did in 2012, throw it up, see if there's any fish in the water, and
Right.
kind of maybe go from there.
Yeah. Well, I would say you gotta give it a shot and see where you're going to connect. As I know what you're talking about with chemistry, and I had that major problem when Suffer kind of took its first dissolution, and Justin went his other way, because we grew up playing together, and he was my other half when it came to learning how to write, to learning how to play, because much like we're all in the same boat back in the early 90s, like you pretty much pick up an instrument, and once you learn how to play power chords, you're like, who's in the band? Like, what are we doing? And you learn how to
That's exactly how that's exactly how it happened for me. I'm like, all right, who wants in?
Yeah. And then you learn how to play together and a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
those guys that you spend that much of your life with,
yes,
they just become that chemistry in writing. And then when you transition from, and drummers are just equally as tough, when you're used to how this guy does it, and it
right,
becomes an eye contact thing, when I don't have
yeah,
to say anything, I can just look at you and we know, like, okay, you're going to
right,
do this, I'm going to do this. And as you transition those, and I think, back then when I was younger, it was like, we'll find somebody else and whatever. And then as I'm older, it's like, it's hard. It
it,
is, it is a
well,
lot
and
harder.
I think that was for me, when we were looking for drummers in 2012, and then Eric was like, "Hey man, I'm down. Let's do this." And I
Hmm.
was just like, "Okay." And he came in and he was very, even though he wasn't like Kent, he could play because Kent had been a big influence on him, and he was coming to see us at 16 and 17 at the
Awesome.
metal fests. So he knew about the band really well, and he knew Kent's intricacies. So when he came into the band, like he was playing the stuff, like it was like almost verbatim. And like when I first started Morta Skuld, when Jason O'Connell came in, he never played death metal, so he had to kind of adapt to my style.
Right.
And then when the band broke up briefly and I came back and they had tuned up, I had to adapt to his style.
Mm.
And that was really tough for me because he has a very intricate picking hand, and I
Hmm.
mean both of his hands, just very intricate, a very, very well-rounded player. Uh, just have I just He's one of those guys who's just naturally good at what he did,
Sure.
and it was unfathomably for me to even I couldn't even understand it because here I'm struggling. I'm looking through notebooks and trying to take private lessons off and on and like trying to kind of keep ahead of the game. So it was different, but yeah, I mean I honestly I think when it comes to writing new music that I was like, you know what, I got a bunch of riffs cataloged. I still obviously got music in me, so
Hmm.
let's go for it. Let's see what happens, and hopefully we'll do another record here in next couple years. And I just I just look forward to seeing what we can accomplish and come up with.
Good. Well, the thing that I'm glad I'm not hearing is the whole age and the end of the road thing, because I've had this discussion, and I think it's a thing, like, once, and I'm not hacking on you because your age, because
No, 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 no.
it's one of the guys I play in a band with. I a couple years ago, I had some health problems and certain, back problems and whatever, and I was like, man, I don't know, this is incredibly hard on you, and I don't know how some people have done it physically
Right.
for the time that they have. And I know a lot of guys have physical problems as a result, and neck problems and back problems and knee problems and
Sure.
whatever. And I started woesing me, and he was like, dude, he's like, and at that time Ozzy was still kicking and stuff, and he's like, if Ozzy can do it and Rob Halford can do it and all
Yep.
these other guys are out there doing it, then who are you to complain? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it kind of set this thing off for me. And this is actually back before even Dio passed. And Dio was a huge influence for me just as a
Oh,
young kid.
absolutely.
And he's like, just listen to Ronnie. Ronnie is ancient, and his voice towards the end of his life was fantastic.
Yeah.
And if you have it in the tank, you should be using it. And I was like, man, it resonated with me huge. And it kind of changed my mindset into the fact of, like, instead of sitting here thinking like, well, this might be my last album, is to start thinking like, man, I got a lot in me and I've got a lot to give. And it's not just necessarily putting on a record, you know what I mean? And that's why the podcast came about. It's why a lot of these other things came about, and just like connecting with people. And like, man, my involvement in music can be so much more than just being a metal guitar player and singer. That there's so
Hmm.
many amazing relationships sitting out there waiting to happen. And now, with metal arguably being as popular as it's ever been, that it's something now where it's like, okay, you're the historian, you're the caretaker of what got us in this genre where it's at. And like,
Right.
man, the potential to do stuff is so high, that and I was like, great transition point in my life, and that's why I love it when I talk to older musicians, where like that's the last thing in the world they're talking about is being done. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't honestly. I don't know. I just look at it as I'm lucky enough to do it as old as I am, and why not?
yeah,
You know, when you've been doing it for as long as we have too. I mean, I'm going on 35 years, and
yeah,
it's just like I honestly, I don't know anything else except for my day job, which
yep,
isn't like skilled labor or nothing, but like other than playing guitar and writing and playing and singing, and that's really all I feel like I know. And it's kind
yep,
of like something that I always say when it's in your blood, it's in your blood, and it's
true,
like it's like breathing. You just keep sailing along and you just keep doing what you're doing. And like I said, I'm very grateful that I can still do it at my age.
yeah,
Some people obviously have passed, and but I keep trucking along, and I just look at it as as long as people want to do it, it's like why not? I
absolutely,
mean, we might not have trillions of dollars or something like that to do it, but the whole point is there's still a niche, and I think and the one thing you were saying about legend status and stuff like that, I get that from guys now and again. It makes me feel kind of funny because I don't feel like a legend. But they look at like, oh, you were back in 90 and 89 and 90 and when this was happening or that was happening, or you were met this person or met that person. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it makes me feel good that some of the younger bands have come up to me and been like, man, your first record just set the course for us or whatever. So I mean, it's very humbling, I guess, to
right,
hear that.
right.
So it makes me feel good when I hear it, but it's also very humbling at the same time.
Yeah, and I think the one great thing that I pick up with talking to people, especially through the podcast and stuff, is insight and a change in perspective on stuff. And I was talking to Matt from Cryptopsy when he was on about people and how many people are listening and how many people are viewing. And he said, he had a guest on his show who also ran a podcast. And he said, well, here's the best way to think about this stuff, and take it for your podcast, take it for your band, take it for whatever, is if you get 500 views on whatever it is you posted and you opened up your back door and those were the people that were sitting out there watching,
Yeah,
is it worth it?
yeah,
And it's like, fuck, you don't think about it in that sense, but you think
right.
about it in your music too, right? So you post your video on YouTube and whatever, and it gets 20,000 views and whatever. Well, that's 20,000 people who give a shit about what you're doing.
Yeah,
And when you talk about, being humble on stuff, that's fantastic. But it's that weird little line, I think, as you get older. And I'll never forget, I had this conversation with Jack Owen maybe 10, 12 years ago. And we were sitting out in a parking lot before the show, and I said, do you ever think about how many people you changed the trajectory of their life, like, with the bleeding and Tomb of the
right.
Mutilated or whatever? And he's like, no. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I just don't think it really did. And I'm like, dude, it
Yeah.
changed millions of people,
Oh yeah, for sure.
So if and he's like, well, I don't know, but it's like being humble. But in that same regard, you think about your band and like people coming up to you and people mentioning stuff, and if people remember it, you've touched them and affected them somehow,
Right,
that it is important, and it is to
right.
to hold yourself to that standard, but to also understand, like, and be proud of that fact, like, yeah, maybe that guy picked up a guitar because of Morta at some point.
Yeah, or even like when you play, you're out, you're doing these runs or something like that, and like you play in front of, I don't even know where this was, but I remember we played a show once, and it wasn't like the great. I don't even want to use the word great or not like that, but because obviously I have different measurements of what great are, but like I think there was like maybe 10, 15 people tops. It wasn't really a big show, but these kids were so into this. I
Hmm.
mean, into it, and then at the end of the night, they were just I was like very humbled because they were just buying like everything. I mean, I feel like we sold more at that show than some of the other bigger shows. So I mean, they were just very into it. And when you have somebody come up and they grab and they hey, can I have this sticker? Or, I'll give you $1 for this sticker, and they take a sticker, and you're just, that to me just tells you that, like you were saying, obviously I must have impacted them on some
Right.
level.
Right.
But I don't, no bones about it though. I don't know. I just try to be humble.
Right.
There's no other way for me because I just have to be. I never want to get an ego. I mean, back in the day, I think I probably, well, I know I did. I shouldn't say probably. I know I did because I've heard stories of past band members are like, oh yeah, well you did this, and if you got this in the mail, you did that, and I'm like, what? Really? It doesn't sound like me. But back then, yeah. Somebody, oh yeah, back in the day, you wouldn't even talk to me, or you looked at me different, or this, and all of a sudden, like we're best buddies, and so it's like you said, it's a maturing thing, it's a learning thing. As you get older, you start to appreciate things a little more. And like I said, I just want to be humble because if 2 people or 3 people out there like what we're doing, then I feel like I've done my job.
Right. Exactly. That's a good way to look at it, and it's probably far, far more than that. And just knowing, like, man, if anyone's picking up what you're laying down, then it's worth doing it. And
Exactly.
it's inspirational, and, not to mention, the quality of material that you guys have done, but the longevity of material. I think it's fantastic. So, I mean, kudos to you for really,
Thank you.
riding the game out for as long as you have, and continuing to do so. I mean, it's fantastic to see people do that. And I'll say this again. I think it's guys like you, and not to sit here and toot horns, but it's the fact of it is like guys that continually keep grinding forever give the guys who are getting into the game a reason to do so. Because if the pillars aren't there, the roof comes down. That's just the way it is. So,
well, I always told my guys back in the day when we first started, I said, be professional. We might not be the best players or even good players, but if you come off and you act professional, I think the rest will kind of come.
Right. So, going through that whole loop, I want to circle way back. I mentioned I was going to do this, and I wanted to do this out of curiosity and whatnot. So when you got out of high school, 2 things that you had mentioned early on that I wanted to touch on is, one, you had some. You mentioned that you had some gear and an issue with your mother as far as gear. Real quick, your early stages of getting gear, getting involved in music, and then normally, like the things that I have, and I'm not trying to exploit anything here, but just out of curiosity, normally it's a lot of parents being supportive. That's the stories I hear. Oh, my parents were super tolerant, and the band practice, because that's how my parents were. It's not that they were super supportive, but they just put up with my shit, and which I guess is kind of supportive. The band practiced at my parents' house and that type of stuff.
There you go.
But
that's awesome.
So to hear the flip side of that token and still have someone who is in music, kind of give me the ins and outs of that, if you don't mind.
Well, oh man, I was a typical Midwestern kid, broken family, divorce. Mom was, still is bipolar, so a lot of issues there. I kind of had to raise myself to a certain extent. And when I really got into music because my mother would always put on records, and she would kind of sing with the records all the time. So that's where it kind of. So then I started getting into that same thing, and I started listening to like soundtracks. That was my first love, was soundtracks. The Star Trek, the motion picture, Flash Gordon, all that good stuff. And then basically it led me into wanting to sing. Say, I'm going to be a vocalist. And then if you fast forward, like I said, after I came out of the Marine Corps, what I was lucky enough to do is when I met Jason Hellman, that his mom, I feel like she was a second mom to me, And she was very, because I was older than everybody. I was probably like 21, 22, and the rest of the guys were like maybe 17.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was able to drink, and go to bars and stuff. But his mom was unbelievably supportive of us. Like, she believed in us, and she did everything,
Oh, wow.
everything that we. I'll never forget it. Eric was like, "Okay, you guys want to play death metal? Go out and get Obituary, Pestilence, Death, Sadist, Testament," and we literally ran out. She took us like little kids, took us in her car, drove us to the local music store, and bought every one of those cassette tapes for us.
Oh, wow.
So we would have that influence. And then fast forward, I had some gear that I was working with early on, but we knew that we wanted to be really professional. We wanted to have professional gear. So she literally borrowed the money to me and the other guitar player and said, "Here, get what you want, get what you need."
Wow.
And we both went to our buddy at a local music store, and we both came home with like Marshall stacks, rack gear, all that good stuff. And she just, I mean, everything. I mean, even early on, she bought us the van to go to Minneapolis. Just very supportive. I mean, I lived there rent free for years. She always bought all the food and made sure we were, everything. If we would have another band over, she would go out of her way and go to the store and buy food for them too. And just an amazing woman, very supportive. And I feel like I owe a lot to her, because if she wouldn't have been in my life, and also we practice at the house too.
Mm-hmm.
So her house was like the band party house, and she was a school teacher. And we literally would have somebody come over. I don't know, somebody. They'd be like, "Oh man, is it too late for you guys to play?" It'd be like 10 o'clock at night. We'd be watching Headbangers Ball or something, and we'd be like, "You want to hear a couple songs?" And we'd literally go in the basement, crank these things up, and she would be sound asleep. Like, she would sleep through everything. And she would be sound asleep, and the next day I'd be like, "Oh man, you're probably really mad at us we did that." She goes, "No, I didn't care. Because I kind of heard it in while I was sleeping." And no. I mean, she literally, even the first couple demos, she was in the studio with us. She'd bring her her homework or her schoolwork to correct. She would go to the store and buy us big boxes of like snacks, so we could feed our faces while we were in the studio. Her voice is actually on the first demo, and I think 2 songs we used her voice. So she just was unbelievably supportive. I owe a lot to her, because I really think that if that wouldn't have happened to me, I might not have pursued it.
Sure. Well,
So,
I think it is. That's why I asked, is because it seems like without some type of supportive infrastructure, that it's hard as a youth to be involved in music. There's an expense. There's a facility. There's so many elements that go into it that without support, it's really hard to see how that pans out. So that's why I was curious. So,
well, my family was like, "Oh, you're a dime a dozen." Really, my family was like, "You're a dime a dozen. You're not going to amount to nothing." This and this and that. And that, I kind of used that anger, and I said,
Cool.
I'm gonna get signed. I'm
Right.
gonna get signed. I'm gonna do a record, and I'm gonna show you guys. And that's kind of what happened.
Right.
So I kind of used it as my motivation.
Awesome. So then the other thing I wanted to, that's a great story, and a great insight. So I appreciate you sharing. The other thing was getting into the military. My two parts of that is my father was an Army guy for a long time. And it was a road that I was very, very close to going down coming out of high school. And the thing that prevented me from going down that road was music. That I ended up getting in and touring a little bit and traveling, and it was always like, well, if this goes to shit, then I'm gonna join the military.
Right.
And it, luckily for me, I've always had music as a pretty stable structure in my life for, since 1989. I've been playing in bands. I started playing, probably 86, 87 was probably my first bands. So pretty much all of my functioning mental life that I've been playing in music. But it was a very close decision for me coming out of high school. And then for you, it was like it kind of went the opposite direction. So,
Right.
I have a huge amount of respect for each and every person who does time and serves our country. So I'm just wanted to kind of touch base and a little bit about your history in the military and how that was for you, what that experience was like for you.
So I had gotten out of high school, and at the time when I was in high school, I passed that whatever, like they changed the drinking age.
Mm-hmm.
So in high school, I was of age to drink. So that was a little different because a lot of kids obviously couldn't. But I was out at the bars every night, and I would go and see. I would just sneak into some of these shows, go see some of these bands, and then I just tried doing a lot of different 9 to 5 stuff, and I just said to myself, I'm not really cut out for this 9 to 5. I'm just not. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought being a musician would be perfect because most musicians aren't 9 to 5 anyways. And then a good friend of mine, close friend of mine, had just went in the Marines, came home, and I don't know. He came home and he was all, he was standing taller, and he just had this, well, I would say confidence. I'd say overconfidence about
Right.
himself. So he had this overconfidence about himself, and I was like, wow, like they really did that to you, And he's like, yeah, 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 And I was like, okay, okay. And I just remember going through job to job to job for like probably a good 6 months or a year, and I was just like, this just isn't panning out for me. I don't know what to do with my life. I'm clueless. I wanted to be a musician. I feel like I was a failed musician because of my mom and kind of nixing that with the gear, smashing my gear. So I thought I don't want to go through that again. And then I went in the service. Obviously, I went through the boot camp and all that good stuff, and cried my way all the way through it until the end. And then I finally got my first duty station, which was in Japan. Japan is a very big music country. They love their music, especially metal. And that's where I met my buddy that I had mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier. And him and they would have these called East Coast and West Coast. And they were these two little dingy. Anybody that's been in Japan and been like in Okinawa and stuff, it's not very modern. So these two little dump dive bars. And at the time, picture discs were the big thing over in Japan. And so we would go to this bar and we would just get ripped pretty much nightly. And you could request songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but they were all on picture discs. So, you had to take the picture disc out, put it in the player. And at that time, Japan was, so like Guns N' Roses was out and all these other bands. I had never heard of any of these bands. When I came back to the States, I'm like, I don't even know who these bands are because they came out when I was overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So we were still listening to like, I don't know, Judas Priest and what is it, Defenders of the Faith record, Motley Crue Smoking in the Boys Room and Tesla and just TNT and just all these like really Iron Maiden, all these old classic bands, or well, not old, but classic bands. And so we would go there and we would just get ripped like nightly and just keep requesting song after song after song and looking through all the catalog and just playing what we wanted to play. So that really got me through some pretty rough times, just because I had never been away from home that long before. Mm-hmm. And I was homesick, and you're in another country, it smells different, there's different customs, different culture all around.
Right.
So I ended up when I ended up leaving Japan, I came back and I did a stint in North Carolina. And when I was in North Carolina, the particular I was in the engineer department, and it's a fancy name for what we did. I purified water, so engineer. I don't,
Sure.
A lot of people think, oh, you didn't. No, I just literally stuck some chemicals and this and that. Laundry. I did laundry too. I'd wash the troops' laundry, which was a really awful job to have, to just shove bundles of laundry into this big industrial machine and just sit there and wait till it's done. But I came back and I just really hated it. Like I just was like, this isn't for me. And I was lucky enough to where they had enough people in the particular billet that I was in. They had enough people, and they were like, early. You want to do it early out? And I'm like, let's do it. Let's just get me the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget it. I went to the local. I went into town to get my flight and all that, but I went to a music store and I bought 2 cassette tapes. And I bought the first Tesla record and the very first Forbidden record.
Ah,
So those are the two tapes, and I listened to those the entire flight all the way home. And then, like I said, and then when I came home, I was like, "Who wants to be in a band? Who wants to start a band?"
Right.
I didn't even take guitar lessons. I didn't even know how to play guitar. I just said, "Who wants to be in a band? Let's start one."
And I
And
think when you say that, like, and I know we kind of touched on it a couple different times, but I think that is why so much of that early metal was so different, is because so many people who had no coaching, no
no,
direction,
no.
nothing. They just did what naturally happened, and it made for just an ocean of unique musicians.
Oh yeah, I mean, like the other day I was on Instagram, and I don't even know where these two ladies were from, but they're doing like a cover of like I think "Without Sin" from Dying Remains,
Hmm.
and they're doing the cover,
Mhm.
and they're playing it like a different tuning, but yet it's still, they figured it out, and the one chick's like kind of screaming like black metal vocals over it, and I was kind of like, wow, I feel really old. But at the same time, it was very humbling to see that. So, and I think that first record really shows like we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, all my solos are out of key, they're crazy. And then when I hear, where I'm getting at is where I hear these other fans or people cover or do a playthrough of the song, and they're playing all this stuff that's out of key. I'm like, I don't even know how to play that anymore. Like, I can't remember anything I did.
Right.
So a lot of that first record, like a lot of what I did in that first record was like really organic. It was just,
Yeah.
I did it. I didn't retrack it. I didn't edit it. I just did it and was like, yeah. And sometimes it makes me cringe. Now listening back, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm such a better player now.
Well,
I'm like, oh, why did I do that?
yeah, it's I don't know. I think there's a beauty in it though, and I mean,
Yeah,
you could say that about anybody's early record is I bet they cringe when they hear it. And we I talk about this with a couple of my buddies that I play with too, and they're like, "Oh, because one of my favorite records of all time is Born Again from Black Sabbath, and which is one of the shittiest
ooh,
sounding Sabbath
that's such a
records
good
ever."
record.
But it
That's
is.
such a good record, though.
It is so
Oh,
good, and it is
one of
good
my favorites.
because of its scabs and scars. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and they're like doing this whole thing where they're gonna remix it and do whatever, and I'm like, "Ugh." And I've heard a snip of the remix, and it does sound really good,
Yeah.
but it
Well,
to me,
Gillan's voice on there is like so amazing because of
dude,
the high screams and shrieks, and I was like,
it is.
I remember when that record came out, I was like, I loved it. I loved it from day
I
one.
couldn't take it out of my Walkman. I mean, it was
I,
like everywhere I went, I had that fucker on, and it was, and again,
right?
like Ian's vocals were just next level.
Amazing.
And it was really, I was at that age where I was starting to look for things. I had kind of fallen into, like suicidal tendencies and a few things like that, where I was, and I was
Sure.
just really starting to get into, like Show No Mercy, Slayer and whatnot, and then it was like Ian's voice was like, man, the possibilities and the dimension that a phenomenal singer can bring to the table, and really drove me to find things that were next level. That album was one of those records, the riffs were
Right.
so heavy and
Well, but yeah, I was just gonna say the guitar playing on there was like totally different than like the previous records.
yeah. Yeah.
And it was weird. It's like I feel like you take that, like you have this collection, you have Sabbath, and then it's like you have Born Again.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't like fit
For sure.
in my opinion, but it's one of those records that you're going to listen to it over and over and over again.
Hey, did you ever watch the documentary about it was interviewing all the band and stuff about the making of like the whole process of that?
No, I don't
You
think I've
have
seen
to
that.
you have to watch it because it's
Is it on YouTube somewhere? Probably.
yeah, I think it's
Okay.
it's spliced up into segments, I think, on YouTube and
Okay.
stuff. But it is,
No, that would be
if you're a
awesome.
fan of
Oh
that
my God.
record, it is
Oh,
so
please.
good. All the way
Yeah.
down to like "Disturbing the Priest" is like one of my favorite
Oh,
Sabbath
Zero the
songs of all
Hero.
time.
Oh yeah.
And
I started that's what kind of honestly that's what got me into wanting to be a musician was Ozzy.
yeah,
It started with Sabbath, and
mhm,
then I was in I think I was in grade school or I don't know, whatever, maybe 7th, 8th grade or something like that. And we were at this this takes me back, because Pizza Hut, when they had the buffets and the
mhm.
red cups and all that, and we would sit in there, and my buddy's like, he put on Crazy Train, and I was like, whoa, what is this? He goes, you've never heard that? He goes, oh, well, if you like that, let's put Paranoid on,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
then boom. And then after that, I was like, ooh. And my mom asked me, what do you want for Christmas this year? And I was like, can I have every Black Sabbath record? And at the time, there might have been like 10 or I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, so I got that. So I was, no, that huge influence. Obviously very sad to, hear he passed away, especially so shortly after what he did. And I wish I worked one Ozfest, and he was standing right next to me, getting ready to go on stage, and I feel so dumb. I wanted to say hi and shake his hand,
Right.
and I was so like, I'm not going to say nothing. I'm just going to stand here like a show hand that I am,
Right. Yeah, it is kind of all the heroes that we grew up with, when we were children are now to that age of mortality, or close.
John Sykes too.
Yeah,
Oh man,
I think we're in for the next handful of years is going to be a wave of toughness when it comes to that kind of stuff. So it's
unfortunately, but you know what? Like you had mentioned, we just got to keep forging forward and do it while we can still do it. And
absolutely
be happy.
And I think that's even more of a gesture and a nod to that is, I mean, even with Ozzy, I mean, that guy up until, what was it, 12 days or 14 days or whatever it was, I mean, he was on stage, and that is just like the war cry, I think, for every musician is you don't have to give in to time. I mean, it is something that I think it is keeping that mindset, and I remember distinctly my dad, so I lost my dad when I was in my early 30s, and
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
He was a great guy. Just did not understand what the fuck I was doing. And, I was,
right.
And that's all well and fine. I mean, but, he kept saying to me, he's like, what are you going to, how long is this going to go? And whatever. And cause do you see yourself doing this when you're 50? And I'm, cause I'm talking, when I'm like 16, 17 years old playing in death metal stuff in my parents' basement, and he's just like irritated, lets me do it. But he's just like, what are you going to do, man?
Right.
And, I said, well, I'll just do it as long as I can. And then, suppose I'll get a life and whatever. And here I am at 51 and I'm doing more than I've ever done before. And it's like,
That's awesome.
It's funny that I would have never thought that, basically having incredibly mild in whatever type of, success with this stuff, that I'd still have the drive to do it. But I think that is what innately makes death metal unique and extreme metal.
I agree.
That we are the only genre to have the longevity and the underground structure that it does. I mean, there is no other genre that has what death metal and extreme metal has. And I think it's something that every musician that's played in the genre for a long time should be incredibly proud of being a part of building it, because it's an infrastructure that is global and it's unlike anything else. So, and that kind of is where I'm going to kind of leave that with you is a tip of the hat to you for being in the industry for as long as you have, and the contributions that you've given. And, I recommend everybody who has not taken a moment to check out Morta Skuld to go do so and to research the catalog in full. Because I think it's a chaptered catalog that shows growth and maturity through time, but also a commitment to oneself in not deviating from what you are good at doing and what you're passionate about doing. So I appreciate you taking the time, being with me and sharing your life with me. It's been awesome to get to know you a little bit. And I know I mentioned this to you prior, is usually I go in and I have a little bit of script on stuff, and this time I did not do that, and I deliberately didn't do that because I know you've got a great story to share. And I appreciate you taking the time with me, man.
Well, you know what? It's my pleasure. I thank you so much. And I definitely have to research your band now. And also, my wife loves South Dakota. So
yeah.
We will be coming through, I'm sure, probably when it gets warmer.
Yeah.
And
don't come now.
I will. No. but I'll definitely have to look you up.
Yeah,
Maybe
please
we
do,
can
man.
get together and have a couple beers.
You got it. I would be honored and thrilled to do so,
Awesome.
and whatnot. So, again, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
you know, I'd like to probably sit down with you again here in the future and talk
Sure.
some more, because I think there's plenty more to dig into. So,
Absolutely, my pleasure.
all right, buddy. Well, thank you very
All right.
much, and you take care of yourself and keep
All right,
plowing
you
away,
too.
my friend.
All right, thank you, sir.
You bet.
All right, take care.